worry. The baby is a perfectly solution-focused baby, so it could stay anytime it wants, even if it gives sounds. Babies like solution-focused babies like these, they grow up into be solution-focused teenagers. I don't know, how many of you have children at home? Okay. Okay, how many of you will have children at home? How many of you have been children at home? Okay. So my children were suffering from the same constellation, that both parents are involved in this solution-focused thing. And I need to admit that they, at one point, they decided they need a self-help group, okay? And the self-help group that they founded is called SFSFP. Now, the middle SF stands for social, okay. And this means suffering from solution-focused parents. So be careful, be careful. Okay. So, thank you so much for being here in this conversation. I'm so grateful because the topic that we're talking about is relatively new and fresh to me. I thought writing a book was interesting. But then I realized thinking about the book afterwards is much more exciting. That's why I'm happy that you're here, and that's why I would like to make this into a conversation as much as possible, because I'm so curious about your experience. The title of the book is Retuning, and I wonder how you would say that in your Romanian language. Can someone give me a retuning? Guesses. And the word doesn't exist in English either, okay? So it's, make it up. Reconectare. Reaconnectare. Reaccontare. Reaccontare. Cordare. Okay. I think that could work. So the idea is the following: that in a moment you will be in pairs of two, and you will share with each other recent experience where you did reaccordare. Yeah? Okay. And those of you who have children, you're probably used to that. So, you wake up in the morning and you have your plans and things that you think you need to do. And then these lovely children that are sometimes quiet and that take all your attention, they have totally different ideas about what should happen when. So, few people know, but these cute little things, they're actually invented to give you many opportunities for reacordar. Yeah? Okay. So think of a recent moment when you had your plans and then life was not going according to plan, and you needed to retune to, okay, now it's different. In the book, there's about 15 examples. One is about someone who just got fired. He found the dream job of his life, and 3 weeks later, the boss has a conversation with him, and he's fired. Or in the book, there's an example where I wanted to fly home from Budapest to Basel because my wife was ill, and I'm at the airport, and I noticed something is different. Large lines in the departure hall, and people kind of nervous. And then over the loudspeaker, there's the announcement that over the loudspeaker, there's the announcement that's slightly different from this sound. It says there's a fire in the security tower, and they have to stop all flights for indefinite time. So I want to go home because my wife is ill. And my instant, immediate first reaction would to move towards the counters and let all those those poor people in the front row know that this is absolutely unacceptable and I need to go. And this is okay. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. And interestingly, what happened was that while the sound changes in the room when something like that happens, it goes, okay. And while that was happening and people were even moving closer to the counters, I was already turning around and moving towards the revolving doors. And outside, the taxis were bringing departure people who wanted to park. And taxis don't pick up there. But I managed to convince the taxi driver that he needs to take me to the train station so I can catch the night train. Okay, so that would be an example. And there's many more. So I ask you to find an example, a recent example in your life, which is, this is kind of the past, okay, this is the future. Find a recent example in the past where something was happening that you would call not so good stuff, and that you will tell the other person who is, very interestingly and interestedly looking at you, how you made the reacordare from not so good stuff into good stuff. Yeah, because actually I made it quite early the next morning to Basel, and the person who is listening with magnifying, time-slowing ears. So when they tell you about how terribly it started and where it moved, and there's this interesting point here where it tips from not so good stuff, almost neutral, and starting to be good stuff. So tell them, oh, slow. How exactly did you do that? Okay. Wait. What exactly happened? Become a witness of a retuning. Okay? Good. Okay, so 2 and 2. There will be a gong after 3 minutes, so you know that you can trade stories. Enjoy. What happens to you now, this curiosity of wanting to know more about the story, is what happened to me in the last 2 years. I thought I was just going to write another book. And then I realized, for me, this is a life, professional, not only professional, it's a life-changing experience of starting to become curious about the details of when this retuning happens. So I would like to ask you to stay in the same pair and for a moment take a meta position. And if you want, yes, please stand up so you get a higher, you all of a sudden you have friends in higher places who look down on you on lower places. And have a short reflection. Both of you, for some minutes, you were retuners. You were telling about retuning. So you both have an experience how it is to have someone for 3 minutes who looks at you with these big, interesting, curious eyes and seems totally fascinated by your story that you have probably never told before because no one's ever asked you to tell stories about retuning. And how these 3 minutes when you were talking about your retuning, how that made a difference. Just those 3 minutes. And no coach on the other side. Just a witness who is very curious to listen. Okay? So, meta position and share your experience while you were being listened to and while you became aware of your retuning. 2 or 3 minutes. Now this is where I'm genuinely curious. I spent a lot of time all by myself writing the book and spent a lot of time interviewing 50 people about retuning stories. And I have relatively few experiences of gathering what is happening in the process when the two of you talk, what becomes possible. So, how are you different now than 15 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago? Any difference, are you still the same? Or any differences that you notice about yourself just by the fact that you've been telling your retuning, one of your many retuning stories? Can I have a couple of voices? Differences. How is it different? What,
For me, it's different. I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, and 1 child. And most of the time I consider them horrible disruptors of my life.
And now?
Now, like telling part of the story before the disruption happened, I realize that that suddenly my life becomes easier, that these moments of chaos occur when I'm very sure of this important organized thing that I'm doing, and that their role, all these creatures, is actually to make things easier, because after a short disaster of 5 minutes that seems like days, then you're back to this very nice life where you know what to do, and okay, it's some work, but it's not life like that as it was before.
And since you're sitting very close to a jazz musician, your chances of becoming a jazz musician are getting. And by the way, 1 child is not enough. Okay, you need 3 dogs and 2 cats in addition to that. So you learn to adapt in the moment when you get the hat, or in the moment when there is no mistakes. If you make a mistake or a mistake happens, that's exactly the movement. When it turns into a totally different, unique, unheard of, unplanned, beautiful piece of extraordinary music, and it only happens 1 time. No matter how many cats and dogs and children you have, they invite you to find something, to approach something new every time, and new every time. So the children, in case you get more and more solution focused, while the children suffer from you asking these strange questions that you heard yesterday, like, so when was it already a little bit, you can't hear it anymore. So while your children, for self-help groups, you become aware that your biggest helpers to live a life in tune are your children, cats, and dogs. And some friends that always show up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah? They're all your helpers. Wow, thank you. Okay, other experiences. Yeah.
Since the change required, or the energy required to retune an instrument is not very big, on the other hand, it has quite an impact. So if the instrument is out of tune, it hurts your ears, but if it becomes in tune, then it's a completely different matter.
Okay. So, in a way, small change, big impact.
But it's also the fact that you don't do any kind of change. You really have to listen
Listen.
when you're on the right frequency.
Okay, so it says, you don't really do change. You just listen to, and then retune. Okay, wow. Well, okay, good. Anything else that you noticed business that's different? Yeah. Yeah.
I was asking yesterday, Andrew, how do you do it? You know, in your workshop with the autistic children, and I was asking exactly about, because he was telling us about his experience with some people who wanted to do incredible things, but they weren't able to do, and how he switched their mindset to do, actually to feel the same thing, doing something that they're equally passionate about. And I asked him exactly that. How do you do it? How
She's my friend. And I don't know how you came up with it, because it's something very simple. It's not, all these complicated coaching questions. It's about noticing when someone is switching, and then asking, how do you do it? With this kind of curiosity. You should see her eyes now. It's like it's like the invitation to become aware of how you do it. Thank you. Oh, okay. Good. Okay. So, how long did it take? Kati Yankowski back there in the red. She asked me after the airport thing. She asked me on the phone the next morning when my train was pulling into Basel. We were talking, and I said, I had a terrible day, the airport, and it all closed down, and I couldn't hear it. And then she said, how long did it take you to read two? I think it was a world premiere. And I said, well, probably all night in No. Actually, when I heard it over the loudspeaker, I was already moving in the other direction.
This is called
Returning. Okay. Klaus says this is called returning. Okay. Thank you. Turnaround management. Okay. Good. Yeah. Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. Why didn't you come? If you would have told me earlier, the book would be called different. Turnaround management. Yes. Okay. Okay. Now, I start to discover the relevance of this tiny little thing. Take a magnifying glass and start to look very closely at this moment of turnaround management. The impact on the rest of my life and also my professional life is surprisingly profound. Before, some of you might know, I've been in this coaching thing for 25 years or so. And all of a sudden, something totally new pops up. And to check back with you, how many of you are, in this coaching thing in the sense that you professionally do it? So you offer yourself as a supportive coach in all kinds of situations with single clients or with teams. How many of you would say, I do this coaching thing? Okay, coaching thing, non-supportive coach. Coaching thing. Okay, we will talk about this later. Very interesting distinction. How many of you are, most of the time when you're in your work environment, just curious witnesses? So people come up to you and they talk about, and you are engaged, you're interested, and you're very interested in, how did it happen? How did you do it? How long did it take? Yeah? Okay, how many of you are in that field? Okay. Okay. Good. I'll give you a little bit of background before I started the book. First, I wanted to write the last book about coaching. Done with this. And now this book is my first experience after coaching. I noticed that being a curious witness is something that someone without any coach training can do with anyone. How do I know? One of the stories in the book is the story of Norbert, the cab driver. I did a lot of business in Budapest, so I was often flying to Budapest, and then the driver would pick me up and take me to the client. So, you know, regularly, sometimes several times a month, we had these 45-minute drives in the cab. And I started to be curious about where Norbert the cab driver wants to end up in his life. And he, being Hungarian, told me of all the difficulties. To get there. And I became a curious witness of the few instances when, for example, he had a fight with his girlfriend, and 3 minutes later, he walked up to her, gave her a kiss, and said, "I'm sorry." And I said, wait, slow down. How did it happen from being so righteously mad about her to do that? And he started to tell me, and that became part of our airport conversations. But interestingly, much more interestingly, Norbert started to do the same thing with me. You know, if you have so much time, you know, you talk about stuff. So he got to know part of my life, and he got to know part of my hopes and dreams for my life, and he was very obviously clear where I was stuck. But he kind of copy-pasted what I did. So whenever I told him a story that, for example, I bought a new car in life crisis, and the new car was more about my personal dreams and needs than whether it's really suitable for a family of 5, I said, wait, slow down. So this moment when you changed from van to something more fashionable, how did that happen? So now I know for sure that you don't need a coach training for this. It's something that anyone can do with anyone. Just curiously witnessing a moment when they talk about a retuning. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure yet, but today is an excellent day to find out more about it. My guess is that in the corporate world, and I saw your arms going up yesterday, many of you are involved inside the corporate world. Having 1-hour coaching conversations is not happening regularly, but witnessing other people in a crucial instance, maybe curiously asking about them about it, or slowing down the time and wanting to know more exactly. That seems like a perfectly normal coffee break conversation. So my hope is, if you like, and that's my invitation, to let me know of your experiences, whether you can sneak in such things as short 5-minute conversations on slowing it down and wanting to know exactly how it happened. Okay. I suggest you do another practicing experience. So stick with your story that you have, your own retuning story if you like. Or if you like, maybe you have 2 in your life. You know, you're old, so probably it happens more than one time. Find a new partner, decide who is telling the retuning story and who is just listening as a curious witness. Okay. Maybe asking, how long did it take you? Or maybe asking, wait. How did you do it? Slow down. I want to know exactly how this moment of, not so good stuff, changed into good stuff. Yeah? Okay. decide who and do it one way only. Now you have 5 minutes. Make sure to slow it down and to put the magnifying glass on the moment of the face. So one of you now have the chance to tell another retuning story, and maybe even slower down. And my experience is that it changes the understanding of what's happening. Alex would call it yes and that's basically all it's all about. It's a yes and. And by slowing down, so if here's the word yes, and then there's a gap in between and the and. By slowing it down to find out more about that gap, stuff becomes clear to you because someone is curiously witnessing your story. I'd like to warn you, there's a danger. If you become more aware of the gap between yes and, it will happen that you're moving closer to becoming a jazz musician. The more you realize what's happening, the more likely you notice that when stuff hits you in life, may it be dogs, cats, kids, or other stuff, that the time to retune becomes shorter and shorter. So that's my warning. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you before the workshop. Now you're stuck with it. If you want, you can create a self-help group of people who are suffering from faster retuning. I'd like to shift the attention to the person that was curiously witnessing you. Because that person maybe also just underwent retuning. I'll give you some ideas what I think, how they retuned. If they were professional coaches, and by the way, I put supportive between brackets for you, so you can still join the club, okay? Maybe we're not supportive, and we have an agenda of, creating a space for the client that is as useful as possible when we're coaches. When you're colleagues, you may be not so busy creating a space where they can reflect. Maybe as a colleague, usually in the business context, you're very busy giving them good ideas of what they should do. Does that happen in Romania? Is that only a Swiss? Okay. Okay. And now you've just been in a retuning process. So if you were curiously listening to the other person, you were retuning from anything else that you might do if someone tells you such a story to just being a curious witness. So you had a yes and also. So the person who just told about their retuning, please ask the person that listened to you, hey, any retuning on your side while you were listening to me for 5 minutes? When? How? Maybe even within the 5 minutes. Short moments of retuning. You have a good idea what they should do, and then you decided, yes, that's what they say, and I'll let it happen. Okay, whatever. Ask them about a retuning that happened right now in the last 5 minutes, and give them space to find out more about their own capability to be a jazz musician, even if it's just the two of you creating something unique together. Okay? So, the person who talked just before is now interviewing the person who's listened just before. I would like to wrap up with the story. It's one of the stories in the book, and somehow I like it. A short insight into the story of Marco. He's the guy who after 3 weeks gets fired from his dream job. And we've been in contact, so he sends me a YouTube selfie video. Do you call it that? So he made a video of himself 20 minutes after the firing conversation. And he's out in the park, and he is taping himself. Okay, imagine, young guy, great job, getting fired, and he is, in the video, he's talking about a gift from heaven, an opportunity to explore new things, a possibility for him to experience himself and his capability to be strong. That's what he's talking about, instead of about the boss, okay? So I say, hey Marco, I'm just writing a book about retuning. Would you grant me an interview? I would like to find out more how you manage 20 minutes after being fired to take such a conversation. So we met, and before we started the interview, I told him, hey, I listened to your tape again. Won't you listen to your tape again also? And he's listening to the tape, and he's in tears, and he says, I'm overwhelmed. I wasn't aware of what a lucky guy the guy on the tape was, and I'm really amazed. So I said, okay, so shall we talk about the 20 minutes between the end of the conversation and the making of the tape? And he says, no, actually, I'd be curious much earlier. I'd be curious to go through the conversation itself. And going through the conversation with a magnifying glass and slowing it down, around minute 2, Martin, as he is sitting in the chairs we're having the interview, all of a sudden straightens his backbone, and he notices that he just made a shift. And he says, whoa, that's interesting. Before I was in my usual victim thing, this has happened so many times in my life, so many times, when things seem to be good, you get that slap in the face. And I always thought it was about me, and now I realize that I am strong, and I can take it, and yes, bring it on. He even asked the boss, okay, boss, be honest now. Is it because you have financial problems? Or yes, and I want to know. Or is it something about me? Okay? 2.5 minutes into the devastating conversation. So we finished the interview, and he says, I'm very grateful for your curiosity, Peter, because before I thought the video was brilliant. And I was so proud of myself after the conversation. And now I realize how incredible a guy I must have been during that 5-minute conversation. I'm very grateful that we talked about when it happened and not about, what happened afterwards. So my best wish for you is, if you catch yourself in being a curious witness while people tell retuning stories, that at the end you get the reinforcing experience that I had, that they say, hey, I am so grateful that you curiously listened to my retuning. Enjoy, thank you very much.